The first time I saw her, she was sitting by the cafe window, the late autumn sun pouring through the glass and catching the edges of her hair like it was made of gold dust. She was reading a worn paperback, the kind with folded corners and a coffee stain on the cover, not the kind of book you read to impress anyone, but the kind you read because it means something. I didn't even know her name then, but something about that picture, her calm focus, the way she smiled faintly at the pages stayed with me long after I walked past. The town was small, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and I was the new guy, freshly moved in after years of chasing city noise and losing myself in it. I'd left behind a fast job, an empty apartment, and a feeling that life was moving too fast for meaning. I came here to slow down. I didn't know that slowing down would mean meeting her. For days, I saw her in passing, sometimes at the bakery, sometimes at the farmer's market, once even by the river trail sketching the old bridge. She always seemed content to be by herself, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had long made peace with her own company. When I finally gathered the courage to say hello, it was a rainy Tuesday. The cafe was almost empty, smelling of roasted beans and cinnamon. I walked to the counter, ordered my usual black coffee, and before I could lose my nerve, I turned to her table. "Mind if I sit here?" I asked, gesturing to the seat across from her. She looked up, really looked at me with those deep brown eyes that had a little humor and a lot of life in them. "It's a free country," she said, smiling, and motioned for me to sit. That was the beginning. Her name was Clara. She lived just a few streets away, worked as an art teacher at the local school, and volunteered at the community center on weekends. There was something timeless about her, like she'd found a rhythm the rest of the world forgot existed. We talked for an hour that day about books, music, small-town life, and it felt like I'd known her much longer. I learned that she painted landscapes, not for exhibitions or social media, but simply because they made her happy. She laughed easily, thought deeply, and never once glanced at her phone. The next morning, I found myself back at the cafe, and so began a pattern. Every day at roughly the same time, we'd meet, sometimes by accident, sometimes by quiet intention. One afternoon, as the leaves began to fall in earnest, we took our coffee outside. The street glowed with amber and red, and the air carried the faint smell of wood smoke. I don't know what made me say it, but I told her how much I enjoyed our time together. She smiled softly, then looked away toward the horizon. "You know I'm older than you, right?" she said gently, as though preparing me for some unseen disappointment. I laughed, not mockingly, but in disbelief. "I hadn't really thought about it," I said honestly. She raised an eyebrow. "Well, maybe you should. Most men my age are, well, not looking for coffee and conversation with someone like me." I leaned forward. "And most people my age don't find anyone worth listening to for hours." She blinked, surprised. "How old are you?" "32, I said. "And you?" She hesitated, then said softly, 40. She looked away like she was expecting the air between us to shift, but it didn't. I felt the same calm, the same warmth. "You know," I said, smiling, "my heart doesn't count years." She looked back at me, and in that moment something unspoken settled between us. Not romance yet, not confession, just the beginning of understanding. After that day we became inseparable in that quiet, small-town way. We'd go on walks through the park, sit by the river where the ducks gathered, or visit the school's art studio after hours so she could show me the paintings her students made. Sometimes we talked about her past. She'd been married once, years ago, to someone who'd chosen the road over roots. "I learned not to wait for people who don't want to stay," she said one evening as we sat on the bench outside the cafe. Her voice was steady, not bitter. I told her about my own past, the long nights at a corporate desk, the relationships that never turned into love because I was too busy proving myself. "We both stopped chasing the wrong things," she said, smiling faintly. "Maybe that's what makes this nice." I didn't say what I was thinking, that it was more than nice, it was home. But as weeks turned into months, whispers began. Small towns noticed things. They noticed us walking together, laughing over coffee, sitting by the lake until sunset. And while most people were kind, a few weren't. I overheard one conversation at the market, two women saying she was too old to be starting over and that I was probably just being polite. It hurt to hear, not because of what they said about me, but because I knew she'd already heard it too many times in her life. That night, she didn't show up at the cafe. The next day, neither. On the third day I went looking for her, I found her at the school, painting alone in the art room. "You've been avoiding me," I said quietly. She looked up from her canvas, her expression unreadable. "People talk," she said simply. "They always do." "Let them," I said. "They don't know us." "They don't have to," she replied. "I've learned that sometimes love, or whatever this is, gets harder when people start counting years." I walked closer, my chest tight. "Then stop letting them count, because I don't care." She stared at me, brush frozen midair. "You'll care someday," she whispered, "when you realize the world doesn't look kindly at things it doesn't understand." I took the brush gently from her hand and set it aside. "Maybe," I said, "but I'd rather spend my days misunderstood than without you." She closed her eyes, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. "You don't know what you're asking," she murmured. I smiled softly. "Maybe not, but I know what I'm feeling." That was the moment she let me hold her hand for the first time. It was quiet, steady, and real, the kind of touch that doesn't ask for promises, just truth. We walked out into the evening light together, and though the world around us carried its noise and judgment, for that moment, it felt like it was just us. Two souls who'd finally stopped counting years. The winter that followed was quiet, almost poetic. The town slowed down beneath a soft quilt of snow, and every morning I found the same seat by the cafe window waiting for her. Sometimes she came, sometimes she didn't. But even on the days she wasn't there, I'd catch her reflection in the frosted glass, or maybe it was just my memory filling the empty space. When she did come, she'd bring her sketchbook and draw in silence while I wrote in mine. It wasn't about needing to talk. It was about sharing the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Still, I could feel a wall between us, invisible but real. She was protecting herself, maybe even protecting me. One evening, as the snow fell like drifting feathers outside, I found her sitting alone at the town's annual winter art fair. She was near the back of the hall, her paintings displayed quietly along a side wall, soft rivers, open skies, portraits of people caught in moments of kindness. I stood there admiring her work, realizing that each canvas held something of her heart. She saw me before I could speak. "You came," she said softly. I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She looked around nervously. "People are watching." "Let them," I said again. "They'll see something real for once." She hesitated, then smiled, that small, brave smile I'd grown to love. When the evening ended and the crowd thinned, I helped her carry her paintings out to her old pickup truck. "You really should let the gallery in the city show these," I told her. "They'd sell out." She shook her head. "I don't paint for money, I paint to remember." "Remember what?" I asked. She looked at me for a long time before answering. That I was brave enough to start again. The words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to tell her she wasn't just brave, she was extraordinary. But before I could, a man walked over, gray suit, polished shoes, polite smile. He was from the local art council, offering her a chance to display her work in the city next spring. She thanked him and promised to think about it. As we drove home, she was quiet. Finally, she said, "I don't know if I still fit in that world anymore." I looked at her. "Maybe it's time the world learns to fit around you." Laughed, a sound like bells breaking through the cold. "You have a way of saying things that make impossible sound simple." "That's what love does," I said, almost without meaning to. She froze for a second, then looked ahead at the road, her hands tightening on the wheel. "You shouldn't say that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing you." "Then believe me," I said quietly, every word. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The truck's heater hummed and snowflakes swirled past the windshield. Finally, she pulled over near the river, the same place we used to walk in the fall. She turned off the engine. The world went still. "You don't understand," she said softly. "I've built a life around being okay alone, around not needing anyone." I nodded. "I understand. I did the same thing." "Then why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because maybe we're both ready to stop pretending." She looked at me, eyes glistening. "You really don't care that I'm older?" "Clara," I said, taking her hand, "my heart doesn't count years, it counts moments, and every one of mine lately has you in it." She exhaled shakily, and I saw her tears mix with a smile that reached her eyes this time. "You're impossible," she whispered. "I know," I said, "that's why you like me." She laughed then, soft and unguarded, the kind of laugh that lifts the weight off everything. She leaned against my shoulder, and for the first time it didn't feel like we were defying anything. It just felt right. Spring came like a promise. The whole town turned green again, and Clara's paintings hung proudly in the city gallery, each one with a small plaque that read, "Local artist, small town, big heart." When I walked through that gallery on opening night, I saw people stop, stare, and talk about the feeling in her work, the light, the hope, the humanity. She stood beside me wearing that same calm smile she'd worn the first day I saw her. "You did this," she said. "No," I replied. "You did. You just let me walk beside you." As the night went on, an older couple approached her, saying her art reminded them of their youth. A group of students asked for her autograph. For once, the world wasn't whispering about her age, it was celebrating her soul. When the event ended, we stepped out into the evening air. The city lights flickered like stars caught in glass. She took my hand without hesitation this time. "You were right," she said. "About what?" "About hearts not counting years." I smiled. "So what now?" She looked up at me, eyes full of warmth. "Now," she said, "we stop counting and start living." That summer, we bought a small place near the river, the same one where we'd had our first walk. We planted sunflowers in the front yard, and every morning we'd drink coffee on the porch, watching the world wake up. The whispers had long faded, replaced by nods, smiles, and quiet respect. The cafe owner even named a drink after her, Clara's Blend, a smooth roast with cinnamon. Sometimes I'd see strangers order it and smile without knowing the story behind it. I'd just sit back, holding her hand, grateful. Love hadn't come to us in youth or in glitter or in perfect timing. It had come softly, like morning light after a long night. It had found us when we'd stopped looking, and maybe that's why it stayed. Now, years later, when people ask how we met, she always laughs and says, "He wouldn't stop showing up at the cafe." And I always add, "And she wouldn't stop being the most extraordinary person I've ever known." Sometimes, when we walk past that same window where I first saw her, she teases me, "You really didn't notice the age thing at all." I smile every time. "Still don't," I tell her. "Because when I look at you, all I see is the reason I finally came home."